Okay, before we get into the ridiculous comments, that California trip recently ended, and a lot of people in the comments were telling me other poker rooms nearby that I could have played or should have played. I guess a lot of those people have subscribed since May 2023, because in May 2023 I took a trip to California. It was longer than 3 days. Herbs and Rye and I played 10 rooms in 10 days. Link at the top to the playlist. I don't usually put a link to a playlist, it's usually an individual video, but link to the playlist, which includes 15 videos. And if you're using a device that you don't see when I say link at the top, just go into the description box below the video and you'll see the link to the playlist there. So Herbs and Rye and I played 10 rooms in 10 days. 7 of those rooms were rooms I had never played before. I had played Lake Elsinore, Morongo, and Agua Caliente. The other 7 I hadn't played. So a lot of the places people suggested I had played before. We played Hustler, we played Hollywood Park, we played Hamul, we played Sequan, we played Oceans 11, we played 7 Mile. So played a lot of those places. This trip, Lake Elsinore is really close to Herbs and Rye's house. Besides that, just wanted to play some new places. So if you're interested in that whole trip, the link to that playlist, there you go. Now let's get into the ridiculous videos, ridiculous comments. First one, here we go. I have been dealing for 25 years. Sounds like you want all easy games to deal with no responsibility. I think this was about one of the videos, I had 2 of them, but one of the videos where I said places I would consider dealing, places I wouldn't. Okay, first of all, in red, I don't believe he's dealt 25 years. I'm not sure he's dealt at all based on the other things. Also, that was really pointless. Someone who hasn't dealt could say the exact same thing. I don't know why he felt the need to tell me that debatably he's been dealing 25 years. The blue easy games. Planet Hollywood, I don't know, it doesn't have like, you know, 20-40 mix. It doesn't have like a 9-game mix, things like that. The double board bomb pot game, which runs almost every day, definitely not an easy game. Not an easy game to read hands at showdown when there are 2 boards, and this is largely a new thing in the poker world. Not easy to keep track of the pot every single second, which if this guy deals, I doubt he does. Really don't like wasting time for my sake nor for the player's sake, so I'd say like over 90% of the time I'm ready with the amount of the pot just in case somebody asks for it. So constantly doing addition and multiplication for 30 minutes straight, not the simplest thing. 3-way all-ins aren't simple. When there's an all-in and someone gets quartered and there's an odd amount of chips, you know, it's a big difference whether someone was the shorter stack was all in for 240 as opposed to 241. 240 is easier. The 241 takes a little more time, and there's something I just learned from a Venetian dealer to make it a lot simpler, but before that it was complicated, still somewhat complicated, but yeah, that's not an easy game to deal. 1-3 no limit, fairly easy because I've been playing it for like 20 years. The tournament, by the way, not that no limit is fairly difficult for me. Getting players as many hands as possible, which I feel is important regardless, especially when the levels are 15 minutes, not that easy. And if this guy actually deals and isn't lying, I doubt he does the things I do during the tournament. There are things that are like constantly happening that a player would never know is going on in order to get the maximum amount of hands out. One thing of the several things that I do, when it's likely someone's going to call without exact change, say the big blind is 600 and I think someone's going to call the 600, but the lowest denomination that person has is 1,000, you need change. Okay, if the change is going to be in the pot, great. If it's not, who are you asking for change? Because we don't have change in the well. We have color up chips. We have our 5K chips in the well. We don't have change in the well. So for one, I like to, whenever I can, if a bunch of people have called an early hand in the tournament with hundreds, and there's a lot of 100s, our lowest denomination chip in the pot, I like to take 5 of those out if I can. If I even have a 500 in the rack, which isn't always the case, I like to have 5 100 chips with me in case I need to make change. It's faster than asking someone at the table. If I need to ask someone at the table, well, there are 3 things that make it someone the ideal person to ask. Someone who has tons of change. I don't want to ask someone for all their change just to change another player's chip, and then that person later in the very near future won't have change himself. Like to ask someone whose first language is English. Also like to ask someone who's actually paying attention, not watching a movie on his phone or having a conversation with someone else. So those three things need to be the case. It's not just that I ask someone at random for change. I ask a very efficient person at random for change. There are a ton of things like that that go on to get players as many hands as possible in the tournament. So no, it's not all easy games. He just felt the need to like look for something to complain about when he said easy games in blue, and in black, no responsibility. Regardless of whether you think a game is easy or not, this is the main thing that makes me think he hasn't dealt at all, let alone 25 years. Even if whatever you call the easiest game to deal, it could be easy, but there's never a time where there's no responsibility going on. Every single hand, players' money is at stake and the casino's money is at stake. You need to get the promo right, you need to get the rake right, you need to get every action correct. Every single time someone bets 20, someone calls 20, you have to make sure both those amounts are 20. If someone bets 20 and the other person only puts in 15, that's a problem. One player is getting shorted, one player is benefiting 5. If you ever get the rake wrong, that's a problem. If you ever get the promo wrong, that's a problem. Every single thing you do, there's responsibility involved. So makes me think this guy hasn't dealt once, or I don't know, maybe like dealt, got fired, and then like 25 years later dealt again for a month and got fired, something like that. Maybe that's how he's coming up with 25 years or something. But a lot of what he said in that one sentence, at least he didn't write a paragraph like some people do, but a lot he said in that one sentence made no sense. Next one is similar. I think the first one was in the first video, and then the second was when I made the part 2 of that video, places I would deal if PH closed. So here's the comment: you make it sound like these rooms owe you a good job. Poker dealers are a dime a dozen, no period. Okay, I only highlighted one thing. There's really like 2 parts, but owe you a good job? No, it was actually the opposite. I'm aware there could be jobs with characteristics that I don't like, which is why I'm going way out of my way now in advance, getting ready for a circumstance that might not even ever happen, just to be ready and know the places that I would apply to and the places that I definitely don't want to apply to. It sounds like this guy either never had a job or never had a job with terrible circumstances. I had plenty of times where my employer told me what I would get paid and then paid me less. 3 times it happened consistently in my paychecks. My employer was stealing from me, and more than that, it happened on like the sporadic occasion my check just wasn't the amount it was supposed to be. This included my first job. It's not easy to get a first job. You have no experience doing anything. Well, the options that time, and largely the other times, continue to work and get stolen from, or quit. Okay, well, if you quit, you earn nothing. So I put up with a less than ideal scenario of working and getting stolen from every single time I worked, because earning some amount of money was better than earning nothing. Now, I'm not a teenager, and I don't need to do that. For one, I have options of making money besides working on the books. I also have enough saved that I don't need to put up with a terrible, terrible circumstance at work where there are people I can't stand, or procedures I can't stand, or big wigs I can't stand, or I think I'm gonna get stolen from. So I don't need to put up with any of those terrible things. I'm trying to find out what positions would have some of those things that I don't want to deal with at all, and I'm avoiding those in advance. Still hasn't happened yet, and I hope it never happens, but if it ever comes to that, well, I'm aware of the places that I wouldn't want, and I'm aware of the places I would be willing to work. So it sounds like he, might have worked, but if he did, everything was exactly how he imagined it. He never had anything work out differently than he thought or that he was told. I didn't want to highlight the entire second line, but there was no really one great word to highlight, but I didn't want to highlight the whole thing. Yeah, if you ever say there are dealing positions available, you'll get a lot of applicants. Great dealers aren't ubiquitous. Dealers in general are not great ones. I pay for myself. If I'm sure if you took the amount of hands I get in, well, hands is just one step on the way to rake. If you took in the amount of rake I take in an hour dealing cash games, which is a function of how many hands there are. Not every single hand is max rake, so you can't just take number of hands and multiply it by 5, which is the maximum rake we take at Planet Hollywood. But if you just counted the rake per hour that I take in, and you count the rake per hour that the average Las Vegas poker dealer takes in, I pay for myself. Even if I'm on overtime and I'm getting 18 per hour from the casino in my paycheck, just the additional, like who cares about the total, just the additional, what I take in minus what the average Vegas dealer takes in is more than $18. So if you want a dealer who can pay for himself like that, no, those are not ubiquitous. Yes, you can host the World Series of Poker, you know, need 3,000 dealers and get 3,000 applicants. Yeah, and you can run it. And I actually have a big problem with all the people who say, oh, dealers at the World Series are terrible. There are not X thousand dealers who are world-class dealers. They actually, this is another video, but I went through that interview application paperwork process with the World Series of Poker this year. There are actually a lot of steps in place to separate the poor dealers and the good dealers. They're going out of their way to take the best. It's just that when you need several thousand, you're not going to have several thousand Hall of Fame dealers. Some are going to be average, some are going to be poor. But anyway, that's another discussion. So yeah, dealers in general, yeah, you can find them. Great dealers who pay for themselves, not all over the place. All right, last one, and this guy just needed to be miserable, I guess, like most of the people who make it into these videos. Aren't you living in a tiny room with a small bed in the corner? I'm not judging, but you are not as independent as you think. More hours and downs, even in suboptimal conditions, is not a bad thing. First of all, in red, tiny and small, those are subjective. There are bedrooms in the world that are smaller than mine, and there are ones that are bigger. There are beds in the world that are smaller than mine, and there are ones that are bigger. This guy felt the need to use the words that he deems are negative. And the same thing in blue with the corner. No, it's actually not the case that my bed touches two walls, although I'm actually thinking of moving one piece of furniture to make it that way. I actually prefer when my bed touches two walls. It's less likely that something falls off the bed. As it is, it touches one, so when he said it's in the corner, that was false. And it's hilarious that right after that he says, I'm not judging. Whether or not you think it's judging, he was definitely going out of his way to say things that were unnecessarily and falsely derogatory, but that was his aim with the first sentence. In black, yeah, he doesn't really know what independent means, because if you go to the green, I don't know, for some reason he wants me to hate what I do and do it around the clock. My guess is that's what he does, and he wants other people to be doing the same thing so he doesn't feel alone in his misery. But if he wants a massive house with a massive bedroom with a massive bed, and he wants really large items and really large bills, and then as a result needs to work every second of the day that he can in order to accumulate the money to pay for all this stuff just to break even, that's actually, I mean, that's like what he's making it sound like he wants. That's actually the exact opposite of independent. I keep my number of possessions small. I keep my bills small. Even though this is a formal lease, it's a great setup for me. The amount of rent and the fact that it's a month to month, and I have as much flexibility as I could possibly have in this lease. So that's exactly what I was looking for. And even though I'm not living in hotel rooms and on the road and changing cities as often as I was last year, I took this because of the amount of flexibility that I was able to get. So he was wrong about a lot of things and purposefully derogatory with a lot of his language, and he really doesn't have a great sense of what independence means. But if you're making it to this video, you're not going to be saying a lot of things that make sense. And remember, rice is a spoon food.